As the fourth Republican debate kicked off at the University of Alabama, fiery insults went through the roof. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, and former New Jersey Governor Christie took the stage to secure their spot in the 2024 US presidential election. Now, Nikki Haley, who polls suggest is the strongest contender after Donald Trump was the center of all attacks during the debate, DeSantis accused Haley of not supporting a ban on gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth, something that Nikki Haley has denied. Ramaswamy hit on Haley on her support from Wall Street donors and her time on the board of Boeing. Ramaswamy, who was once a favorite, has been receiving a lot of flack lately. The billionaire hurled insults at his opponents throughout the evening. Ramaswamy called Nikki Haley a fascist and held a sign saying Nikki Haley equals corruption, eliciting boos from the crowd. Christie swooped in to save Haley and called Ramaswamy obnoxious for his harsh comments. Haley appeared unruffled and hit back hard, calling the other candidates jealous of the support that she's been gaining. She said, and let me quote, "I love all the attention, fellas. Thank you for that." Although Trump has not appeared for a single Republican debate, he still holds the fort as the strongest contender. And with that, let me also break down for you what the highlights of the Republican GOP debate were. But before that, let's also listen in to what Christie had to say.
We knew less about Donald Trump back then than we know today, and everything we've learned about him in the last 7 years makes him less qualified, less fit, and less electable. And where was me up there? I finally got a chance. You know, after a while, when the stage is that big, you got to make a decision about whether you want to keep interrupting all the time. But tonight, the stage was smaller, it was more manageable, and I told all you guys, there's only one prosecutor on that stage. You saw me prosecute the case against each one of them tonight, and that's exactly the way I'll prosecute the case against Joe Biden next November, and that's why I'm going to be president in 25.
All right, we'll be delving deeper into what the impact of this entire fourth Republican debate will be as far as US elections concerned. But before we do that, let's also bring you the highlights of the fourth GOP grand debate. The candidates were clashing with personal attacks, something that was a bit limited earlier, but this time we saw them all go guns blazing. Now, DeSantis and Ramaswamy's team were up against Haley. They both ganged up with each other to make personal attacks on Nikki Haley. There was tremendous chaos after Christie defended Haley. At the same time, Haley and Ramaswamy were also seen fighting it out. Ramaswamy, in fact, made some very personal remarks. Haley also emerged as the strongest post-debate. As I quoted her earlier, she said that, "Thank you so much, I feel stronger." And with that, let me also tell you what those remarks were, who said what. DeSantis said that Nikki Haley will be caving into the big donors. Remember, this was also a jibe at Nikki Haley for her being part of the Boeing group as well, this when she had left her government post. Now, Ramaswamy also went on to say that Haley is a fascist neocon wearing lipstick. That's just a very sexist remark, to say the least. He also, now Haley in return said that she's loving all the attention, and she in fact thanked them for all those personal attacks that were made. Christie at the same time slammed Ramaswamy as being obnoxious. Now, Ramaswamy has been making extremely personal attacks. He's also endorsed several conspiracy theories. Haley also took a jibe at Donald Trump, who, as we all know, was absent at this debate. But she's now been posturing herself as the prime contender who is the most fitting one to fight against the US President Joe Biden. And with that, let's try and get in a sense of perspective. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Dustin Olson, who's a pollster at American Pulse Research and Polling, and he's also a political strategist. Many thanks to you, Dustin, for joining in. Now that it's a much more diminished field for these Republican candidates, what were the key takeaways of the fourth GOP debate, according to you?
Well, first, Republicans have been telling us in our polling for months that they wanted to see fewer people on the stage. They don't like all these people jumping on top of each other during the debates. And this was much more manageable. Actually, I would say that Christie actually hadn't really met the polling threshold. I don't know why he actually was given the spot on the stage. It actually should have been fewer people. And I would expect that Vivek Ramaswamy isn't going to be on the next one whenever it happens, if it happens. But I would say the big winner really was NewsNation. A lot of people in the United States didn't know how to even find it on their TV. Yet this was a reason for people to show up, and they did so. I would say that I would actually say for Republican primary voters that DeSantis was the winner for the debate last night. Now I think that really Nikki Haley came into it strong, but ultimately, DeSantis had his best performance, largely based on having his debate with Gavin Newsom a week ago, where they went head to head. And I think it kind of put him into fighting weight for last night's debate. And he really said things that connected with the voters. And I think Nikki Haley, unfortunately, while she did well, I think the hits on the liberal billionaire donors, as well as being a warmonger, is how some people are taking the results of last night.
But Dustin, you know, there's an old saying that says, no stones are hurled at a fruitless tree. What do you make of Ramaswamy and DeSantis ganging up on Nikki Haley? Because, come on, let's admit that there were some very personal remarks passed by Ramaswamy, especially when he calls her a neocon fascist wearing lipstick. That's below the
But he
belt.
didn't say that. So he said you can put lipstick on Dick Cheney, which is what the term in United States is put lipstick on a pig. It was actually calling Dick Cheney a pig, which is also not nice. But yeah, so there's whatever's going on between Vivek and Nikki is very personal. Obviously, she called him scum in the last debate.
Right.
None of this is great. DeSantis, though, his job was to take her on, and I think he did so well. But there was one point during the debate where you had Christie, Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy all just like wrestling and like fighting, and DeSantis just stayed out of it and was above the fray. And we don't support anybody in the race, but it is looking at what Republican primary voters want. I think that they came away with the confidence that ultimately Donald Trump's going to be the nominee unless something unforeseen happens that would be undemocratic. It's not going to be anybody else at this point. But if something were to happen, that DeSantis could be the alternative.
All right, Dustin, I'd like you to take a moment and analyze Ramaswamy's attacks. They were full of conspiracy theories, many of them also endorsing white supremacy. What do you make of Ramaswamy's current rhetoric? Do you think this is going to cut no ice with the GOP voter base?
I actually have no idea what you're talking about as far as the white supremacy or whatever. I'm not sure what you're
No,
referencing.
so let me explain to you. He was in fact attacking the migration policies of the United States. He also went on to talk about the replacement theory, which is about how migrants from the East are now filling up the United States. And we all know that he's been pretty anti-migration.
Well, I don't know about anti-migrant. I don't think that that's really true of the debate. Our polling shows that Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters, independents, all see that the broken border situation it just has people's head scratching their heads as to why can't we fix this? We fixed it 8 years ago, and we did it pretty quickly. And having an open border only puts people in danger, increases human trafficking, it increases drug cartel activity. The opioid epidemic is horrendous in the United States. Like there's real deaths that happen from having a loose border. Whenever you have it easier to come into the country the wrong way and you make it hard to do it the right way, you're only going to put people in danger because people do want to come to the United States. So I think that everybody on that stage though wants to have the border secure and wants to deal with the immigration issue. We actually just did a survey in New York City of general election voters as well as Democratic primary voters, and Democratic primary voters would actually vote for former governor and disgraced governor Andrew Cuomo over the current mayor Eric Adams because of the migrant crisis. It's putting such a stress on the city, and they say that they would prefer to have municipal candidates in New York City who would oppose illegal immigration and make sure that they protect taxpayers of New York City, as opposed to being a
Right,
sanctuary
but,
city.
but I
So
think
I don't
the
think any of this has to do with the other, whatever extra you have that mean. I think it's just it doesn't work, and it's hurting people,
and
and it
the
hurts the
emphasis
migrants
has to be
also.
on illegal, migration, not about, immigrants coming in from, say, even India. We've been seeing that kind of crisis hit Indians as well with the H-1B visa issue. But I don't want to digress. I want to now bring in Donald Trump's presence. Now, polling shows that Trump is far ahead of any of the candidates on stage, despite skipping each debate. His political action committee has called this entire event, the debate that went by, a race for a second place. Do you think that this debate, or do you agree with that statement when they call it a race for a second place?
Yeah, I think that's right. Right now, we have in our polling. Actually, I'll tell you what our most recent national survey had of Republican primary voters. 61% said that we're going to vote for Donald Trump, and there's been nothing that's going to change that since we did this a few weeks ago. And then we have DeSantis at 12%, and we have Nikki Haley at 9.8%. So it's not even second place; it's like a distant second. Now, that being said, we had almost 70% say that they believe that Donald Trump is actually the nominee. And this has been interesting that, there's been some hand wringing about the primaries and how things have happened. But ultimately, the Republican Party, as well as, Donald Trump as the front runner, he's been, he's welcomed everybody to the race. And whenever someone jumps in, he welcomes them to the race. That's been kind of a consistent thing. And it's actually had this effect of Republicans having the sense of having a free choice, that they are getting to work it out, and decide freely. Whereas on the Democrat side, back in the summer, we were doing surveys and we found that, Democrats were very solidly behind Joe Biden, and that has changed. We now have, it's actually 35.9% say they definitely want Biden. These are Democrat primary voters, and 35.2% say somebody else. And Joe Biden only gets into the mid 30s when you do a hypothetical with people like Gavin Newsom and others. So it is, we've actually, by them kind of controlling their primary, preventing people from getting on the ballot, as we saw with RFK Jr., as well as, if you're not aware of this, the Democrat Party has taken away delegates from the state of New Hampshire because they want to have South Carolina, the state that Joe Biden did best in last time, to be the first one. So there's all these anti-democratic things happening on the Democrat side, and it has Democrat primary voters very
Right.
upset and ready to actually, they want somebody different.
Dustin, I'm very curious to know about Nikki Haley's sudden surge. Has there not been a sudden surge for Nikki Haley as far as the polls are concerned? Because now, as you yourself just shared those figures, she's behind Donald Trump and Joe Biden. What do you attribute it to?
I don't know about the sudden surge. Well, I would say that it's been, one thing I'll say about Nikki Haley is that, and I first met her when she was a state representative many years ago. She's a closer. Honestly, she's somebody in her race for governor back in 2010. She would have been, let's say we're 6 weeks from Iowa right now, she would have been in fourth or fifth place in that race for governor. Now, there's a lot of attacks that came at her at the time. Some of them were horrendous. Some of them are things that I imagine people will bring back up. But anyway, she closed strong, and she ended up being the nominee. No one thought that was going to happen, and then became governor. So I would not discount her. And one of the things that was the attack, and the challenge for her is that she needs these DeSantis called them liberal billionaires. She needs these people to come in and to fund these efforts like the Koch network and whatnot to push her over the top. So every time she does that, it's going to kind of is going to help brand her as being supported by those folks.
All right.
But I do think she's bringing people on, and I think she'll probably close strong. But ultimately, whoever wins or gets second in Iowa, the media is going to treat that like it's a victory, and they'll do well in the next couple of states.
Absolutely. I'm sure many eyes are on Iowa as well. But my last question is going to be about this contrast between Biden and Trump now. Recently, we've also heard President Biden go on record to say that had it not been for Donald Trump, he would have skipped the 2024 re-election bid. Many experts have called it the starkest rationale to date for Biden's re-election decision making. Would you agree?
I couldn't even imagine what goes on in Joe Biden's head and how he makes decisions. Honestly, I think the reason why he's running is because he needs to keep his family protected, and we've seen this with the Justice Department and various things that are going on. Jim Biden, his brother, recently just did not show up in a subpoena for Congress. So, I mean, it's pretty wild to see what's happening, and I would think that's actually probably the reason, but who knows? You can never tell what other people are thinking. It's impossible to read minds.